Council meeting of Monday, November 8, 2010. And I'd like to call the meeting to order and start off with a request to Councillor Unger, if you could just give us an update, please, on Councillor McNabb.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was up to see him yesterday, and he is having his good days and his challenging days, and thankfully yesterday was one of the good days. There's been a lot of phone calls and a lot of visitors. The family is requesting, though, that their privacy be respected, because they're doing nothing but answer the phone all day, and they would like to have that reduced a bit, but they really, really appreciate all the support they're getting. So we're with them all the way.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison, would you introduce the lead items, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Replace page 3334, item 11B, staff reports, amendments to the sign bylaw, real estate and construction site signs. Delete item 11F, staff reports, unsightly premises, 183 Commercial Street. Delete item 11G, staff reports, unsightly premises, 187 Commercial Street. Delete item 11H, staff reports, unsightly premises, 125 Comox Road. Delete item 11J, staff reports, unsightly premises, 1329 Wexford Road. Delete item 11K6, staff reports, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title, section 57 for 4277 Clubhouse Drive. Delete item 11K7, staff reports, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title, section 57, 4197 Victoria Avenue.
Okay, and are there any late items? Councillor Unger.
I have one that I would like to add on at the end of the meeting as a special in-camera item.
Okay, thank you. If we could ask for an adoption of the agenda.
Agenda as amended.
As amended. Is there a seconder? All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes.
Move the adoption of the 2 sets of minutes as circulated.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. The minutes of the regular meeting. The delegations pertaining to items agenda items up to 10 minutes. Ms. Sharon Kofed, 3222 Panorama View Drive. Ms. Kofed, if you would like to come forward, up to 10 minutes, please.
I hope I won't take that much time. Mayor and Council, good evening. My name is Sharon Kofed, and I reside at 2322 Panorama View Drive. I'm here tonight to remind all of you that it's Pain Awareness Week, and it starts today. It continues all the way to this coming Saturday. It's been a busy 12 months since I last spoke here at Council Chambers on this topic. We've had not one but 2 major pain forums here in Nanaimo with various pain specialists at both of these events. On top of that, there's been an educational pain forum just for doctors and for the pain clinic staff this September, which was followed up by a rehabilitation forum on pain management in late October. Now, all these events are new and were new to Nanaimo, so this is something new. Today we had our information booth at NRGH. In addition to this, next door, the Nanaimo Harbour Front Library downtown has put on a public display of their material on pain management, so we encourage you all to come out and check it out and to check out their materials, no pun intended. And finally, there is a wonderful all-day event, Living with Chronic Pain in West Vancouver on Saturday, November the 13th, and I have the flyer for that. I'll hand it in at the end of my presentation. For the past 2 years, while I've been coming to council meetings, I've discussed how pain impacts the residents of our area. And we know that pain affects people from every single age group across Canada. Future projections suggest that this number will rise dramatically as our population increases, which will further stress, unfortunately, our healthcare system. According to Pain BC, their strategic plan for the year 2010 to 2013, the prevalence of chronic pain is projected to increase from approximately, this is just BC numbers only, 800,000 people living with pain in the year 2010 to approximately 1.1 million by the year 2020 and 1.2 million by the year 2030. That's a huge number. Currently, there are roughly 150,000 people on Vancouver Island who live with current and that are affected by chronic pain. And we know historically pain has been seen as a symptom to be treated, but we now know through scientific research and education that chronic pain is actually a disease unto itself. Pain is costly, but it's often under-recognized and under-treated according to the Australian National Pain Strategy. And generally, we know that pain management programs are chronically underfunded. But here in Nanaimo, we are bucking the trend. And through your kind support, the provincial government has allocated new funding through the Pay for Performance initiative at the Pain Clinic here in Nanaimo, effectively adding more surgical treatments and in some cases doubling up the amount of services available to people here in our region. Unfortunately, and sad to say, these increased source of money is only good for the next 18 months. But given that there are going to be some significant changes to the healthcare system, which it's undergoing right now, we hope that this temporary funding will become permanent for this valuable service in our community. These types of programs, they definitely help people living with chronic pain because it is certainly a complex disease. Chronic pain is a constant shadow with real physical, psychological, social, and economic implications for all of us. So it's really imperative for us to continue on supporting early interventions for positive outcomes, not only for the patients, but for their families and also for us. So I personally look forward to your continued support on this very important cause now and well into the future, because I probably will come back, given that the province will have to make me. So I'd like to thank all of you very much for your time and your help in this matter this year. Thank you very much. And I have today pamphlets. I know some of you may be interested in neuropathic pain. I can leave it with you, or I can leave it at the desk.
Sure, maybe
and
the staff would be.
I'll leave it with staff, and I also have a pamphlet about the forum that's happening in Vancouver with one of the leading experts in pain from Vancouver coming to that. So I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions, but I do want to mention that the proclamation will be made shortly in the next agenda item on. So
thank you
very much.
Thanks a lot.
Move receipt of the delegation.
Seconder, move and second. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Under Mayor's report, two things. Councillor Kipp wanted me to remind everyone that today is Aboriginal Veterans Day in Canada, and which is significant and important for all, and also just to remind everybody that Thursday, November the 11th, is Remembrance Day in Canada, and there'll be ceremonies in downtown Nanaimo, the Cenotaph as well. I understand as Lanceville and the Cenotaph there too, so we hope everyone will get out and attend. Proclamations that 2010 November 7th to 2010 November 13th is Pain Awareness Week in the city of Nanaimo. Moving on to 9A, Commission reports, Parks, Recreation, Culture Commission minutes of the meeting of the Parks, Recreation, Culture Commission held September 22, 2010. The Commission's recommendation that Council receive the minutes of the Parks, Recreation, Culture Commission meeting held September 22, 2010. Sorry. Okay. Is there a seconder? Moved and second. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Move down into item 11, staff reports, and then community safety and development. 11A, municipal highways renaming Radcliffe Street, bylaw number 2010-7117. Staff recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to municipal highway naming Radcliffe Street, bylaw 2010 number 7117, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda.
Move the staff recommendation.
Seconder. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. B, amendments to the signed bylaw, real estate and construction site signs. Staff recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7118, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda. Move receipt. Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we'll go into item C, Business License Amendment Bylaw 2010-5351.06. Staff recommendation the Council receive the report pertaining to Business License Amendment Bylaw 2010 number 5351.06 to reduce the licensing fee charged for special event or trade show licenses from $165 to $41.25, which represents 25% of the regular amount. And this is presented in the bylaws section of the agenda. Anyone like to move that one? Okay, seconder? Is there a seconder for it? Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. While I support the reduction of the fee, licensing fee, from the $165, I would like to suggest that it reflect an amount more relative to what it costs to write the license by staff. So if there's a number that would be more representative so that it in fact at least covers the cost of writing the license. So if there's a question that I would have would be what amount do we anticipate that it costs us to issue a license, and at the very minimum it should cost at least that amount.
Your Worship, to Councillor Bestwick, we don't have a specific number that cost that it would be to write each ticket, but from the reason we recommended the $41.25 is consistent with a couple other of the business license costs in the bylaw currently, and therefore we mirrored that. From our perspective, it would probably cost in the range of $40 to $60 at a minimum to write the business license. But as I say, we haven't done a study on that.
Is it reasonable to say then that the majority of these special events or trade shows are conducted by residents or local people, or is it people that come through town to do business here for 1, 2, 3, or 4 days?
It's a combination of both. The circumstance we come across most often is that trade shows are being held in town in which they invite both local businesses and businesses from out of town to participate in that. And there's some usually one-day events in which we felt the fee was too high in that case.
So, Mr. Chair, while it's not a great deal of money from $165 to $41, I would prefer to see it be at least reflective of what it costs us to issue the license.
Okay, Councillor Sherry.
Mr. Chairman, when we start talking about the business license, recently we just had a trade show at Bevan Park. Now, the organizers of that event, did they currently have a business license for the City of Nanaimo, the organizers?
The organizers, yes, they do.
Okay, then with all the various booths that were in that building, are they expected to take out a business license as well to show at that event?
No, they are not.
Okay, so that's where I have a little difficulty with the event, is that I'm Joe Smo and I have a business in the community, and I thought, well, it'd be good to have all these outdoor people to come and display their venue. Okay, so more than likely they have to pay a fee in order to set up their booth within the trade show. So I guess I'm having a problem if I'm from downtown Chilliwack and I come over for this event, I don't have to have a business license to participate in this event. My understanding is that correct?
That's correct. Only the organizer has to have a business license.
Okay. So when I look at the number of vendors that participate, that I don't, if they're a business organization within the community, do we request them taking out an additional business license so that they can host this event?
Yes, they do need an additional business license for the organizer only, and to further that is a number of the businesses that are participating in the trade show in this circumstance would already have business licenses because they operate in Nanaimo. I think that one of the goals clearly is that to get as many booths in place for the participants there to display their product and hopefully attract them to come to Nanaimo and set up business here from the outsiders.
Well, if they already have a license, and this goes back to the cost of staff time in order to process the thing. With the number of vendors, they don't have to have a business license to participate inside the building. Just the convener or the organizing agent requires that. And for the number of booths and that within the display area, I think $160 is very nominal. I mean, if it was $10 a booth type of thing, because you got more than 16 booths in most of those.
Just if I can, is there such a thing as a blanket business license for this type of a venue if there's multiple booths involved? Or how is that normally? Do they pay the same amount?
Currently, they pay the $165 if it's a one-day event, a 5-day event, or theoretically a 365-day event. And that's why we looked at this, and we've had these number of requests and discussions with the Chamber of Commerce, who was trying to promote this type of event. And therefore, the recommendation came forward for the lesser amount.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up, and then we've got 4 people to speak, and that is that the new business license for the $41.25, is that per day, or is that for the term of the show they're attending? How does that work out?
That's up to 5 days if they have an event for 5 days or less.
Thank you. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the recommendation as it's written. I believe that trade shows and special events have huge economic spin-offs for our community, and most leave legacies as well. So I certainly endorse the recommendation and want to be more welcoming to this type of activity, and I think that that's a very reasonable $41.25 for a trade show is enough to pay.
Good. Okay. Councillor Oldham.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Johnston. I think the comparison that staff is making is that the standard business license is $165 for the whole year, and here we're talking about special events from 1 to 5 days in duration. It says in the report, and I believe it, that the special events and trade shows attract new businesses to Nanaimo, and that's, I think, a goal that we have. We hear a lot of talk about whether this council and Nanaimo as a whole is friendly to business. Well, here's an example of how we can show some friendliness, because it seems to me that this is not only a reasonable fee, but well-intentioned. So I support the motion.
Okay, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Question to staff, if I may. On page 36 of your report, you talk about 32 special events or trade shows. Would you have a breakdown on those two? How many trade shows, how many special events?
No, I do not. The majority of the events are 1- and 2-day events that single proprietors come in and have a sale of their product for that short period of time, but I don't have the percentage breakdown.
Thank you.
I might just add, Councillor Kipp has a question too. I had a call from a gentleman that was selling, I think it was Persian rugs, and he found that $160 is simply too much, and as a result, he would not come back. I would suggest if we do, and I do instantly support this myself, lower it to $41.25 for a short term, up to 5 days. That I definitely think it'll be incentive for people to come back and put on shows. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, Your Worship, through the staff on this. This is for just city facilities? We don't charge anyone else outside of city facilities?
No, this is for all facilities. And the example the mayor brought up was in a hotel. They rented a space in a hotel to have a sale. So there's examples like that.
Do we do it here in the Bank of Island Convention Center too?
Yes, we've had events in here, and the same rules apply.
Perfect. I'd also like to see it reflect the true cost. And you talk about friendly to business. I mean, friendly to business would not have the license. $41. If it costs that much to do it, it's kind of a redundant cost, so it'd be more friendly to business to just waive it. But if there's a cost attached, we have to recover some cost too. I'll support it.
Okay, I see no further questions. Question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving into DVP 160, 970 Brecon Road. Staff recommendation that council direct staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit number DVP 160 at 970 Brecon Road.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Moving down to RA 265, 4745, and 4801 Ledgerwood Road. Staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to a covenant amendment application to an existing restrictive use covenant which proposes the following. A, remove the requirement for a boundary adjustment subdivision prior to development of the lands. B, remove the maximum lot coverage restriction of 26% for Lot A and 28% for Lot B. And C, reduce the percentage of 3-bedroom and larger units required on the land from 10% to 5%. And 2, direct staff to forward the item to the next scheduled public hearing as per council policy.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there a second on 1 and 2?
Yes.
And is there a seconder for that one? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Item F has been pulled. G, H, I has been pulled. H has been pulled. I, unsightly premises, 1990 Hallen Avenue. It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unsightly premises at 1990 Hallen Avenue. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters regarding 1990 unsightly premises at 1990 Hallen Avenue? Seeing none, did someone like to move the
staff recommendation?
Seconder, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving into unsightly premises, J has been pulled. K, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title section 5.7. It's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies / illegal suites for the properties listed below. The staff recommendation that council by resolution instruct the manager of legislative services to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under section 5.7 of the Community Charter. The first property is 2132 Dugan Road. Illegal construction, finished basement to include a secondary suite. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters pertaining to 2132 Dugan Road? The second item is 5637 Carrington Road, illegal construction, finished basement to include a secondary suite. Is there anyone here in attendance that would like to speak to matters regarding 5637 Carrington Road? Third item is 678 Western Acres Road, illegal construction, conversion of an accessory building to a dwelling. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 678 Western Acres Road? The fourth is 851 Girvan Avenue, incomplete building permit, deck addition, and that's it. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to the matter related to 851 Girvan Avenue? Number 5, 418 Kennedy Street, illegal construction, alter basement and attic spaces to incorporate 2 secondary suites. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 418 Kennedy Street? Number 6 and 7 have been pulled, and we move down to 8711 Nickel Street, illegal construction and a front porch addition. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 711 Nickel Street? Seeing none.
Move the prepared resolution as it relates to all items mentioned.
Seconder, all those in favor? Opposed?
I would just like to make a comment that this is encouraging that they're secondary suites because about a year ago it was all illegal grow operations, and it seems to have died down in that department.
Positive step. Okay, we'll move into corporate services. L, Bevan Park pitch and putt alternative process, approval process, rather, the results. Staff recommendation the council receive, I'll just take you off here, receive the report regarding results of the Bevan Park pitch and putt alternative approval process and the Bevan Park pitch and putt lease agreement, bylaw 2010 number 7113, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Community services, M like Mary, request to direct award truck. Staff recommendation that council approve the request to direct award a used 2005 GMC C5500 crew cab 4x4 truck complete with dump box to Burke Center Truck Limited for $4,000 even plus HST. Sorry? Probably not. What was your? Sorry, you were what, 2 people. Your point was?
Move the staff recommendation.
Is that what I said?
You said 4,000.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry. Wonder why everyone was looking at me. The correct amount for those that is $45,000 even plus HST. Sorry for the oversight.
They're appreciated when you're not in.
Well, no, but there's several people out here that wanted to buy the truck immediately. I think that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move into reconsideration of bylaws to be moved by Acting Mayor Councillor Unger. Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2006 number 4000.399 to add additional requirements for the siting of heat pumps and central air conditioning units be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.485 to add the residential corridor zone RM12 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.487 to rezone 561 Cadogan Street from single-family residential zone RS1 to single-family small lot zone RS6 in order to facilitate subdivision of the land be adopted.
Okay, moved and seconded. I see no discussion, and there may, just for the benefit of everyone, it may be Cadogan or Cadogan. Your discretion on that one. Okay, I see no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
Picky. I move that Bedman Park pitch and putt lease agreement bylaw 2010 number 7113 to enter into a lease agreement with Double H Holdings for a term of 13 years be adopted.
Second motion.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Balance carried. Motion carried. E.
I move that housing agreement bylaw 2010 number 7115 for 13 Halliburton Street to enter into a housing agreement for a 5-year rental commitment for 3 units of a 6-unit multifamily housing development be adopted.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Introduction of bylaws.
I move that business license amendment bylaw 2010 number 5351.06 to reduce the license fee charged for special event or trade show be given first reading.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that business license amendment bylaw 2010 number 5351.06 be given second reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that the same amendment bylaw be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that municipal highway naming Radcliffe Street bylaw 2010 number 7117 to rename a municipal highway be given first reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that municipal highway naming Radcliffe Street be given second reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that municipal highway naming Radcliffe Street be given third reading.
Moving second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7118 to amend the regulations for real estate and construction signage be given first reading.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, when on October the 14th or the 18th, we were given a staff report with several suggestions as to how we would amend the bylaw with regards to real estate signage and construction site signs. And while I read the proposed bylaw, I have no problem with the real estate portion of it. I think that's pretty innovative to link the amount of signage to the size of the project at hand. But I have a bit of a problem with the way it's written with regards to construction signs. On the 18th of October, it was suggested by staff that the proposed amendment seeks to reduce visual clutter by requiring all construction signs to be incorporated into a single sign for all contractors, suppliers, or financiers, or to have a maximum of 3 construction signs per project. And obviously something has changed between October the 18th and where we find ourselves now, because now the regulation, as staff would like to see it implemented, reads not more than 2 construction site signs per contractor or subcontractor are erected on a property, and each individual subcontractor sign does not exceed 1.5 square meters or 16.1 square feet in sign area, and the combined area of all signs does not exceed 9.2 square meters or 100 square feet. And that brings to mind where I can accept that from a visual clutter point of view, if you like, on large signs. I have a problem where it comes to the smaller ones, those construction signs that sites that deal with single-family duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. So what I would like to do is to make a motion to send this back to staff with the intent to make one change, a major one albeit, which is that the maximum allowable total signage on these 4 kind of construction sites, those being the single family and the multi-family one for 2 to 4 units, be restricted to a total of 50 square feet instead of the 100 square feet. I think that will go a long way towards getting all this visual pollution on a relatively small site. And so I'm moving at this point to send this back to staff to make that amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Let's maybe to get the amendment on the floor. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
No, second
by Councillor Kipp. For referral, and we've got speakers, Councillor Oldham, Councillor Unger, Councillor Beswick. Councillor Oldham.
Your Worship, I think that the amendment is worthy of consideration and debate, and we should do that now. But I don't understand why we would be referring this back to staff. It's a simple amendment from 100 square feet to 50 square feet. So I can't support the motion to refer back to staff, only the motion to amend it.
Okay, I would prefer to deal with it now as well. Councillor Unger.
I agree with that. I think we've fooled around with this so long, and it keeps getting sent to the side and sent back and everything else. To me, a construction sign is fantastic. It means there's people working who have jobs and are producing something in our community. Let's just get on with it, please.
Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Worship. I would just echo the comments of Councillor Oldham and Councillor Unger in view that it might be a smaller construction project, but it doesn't mean there's any fewer or any less businesses or companies necessarily working on it. But in terms of referring it back to staff, I'm not in favor of the amendment of referring it back to staff. We've messed around with this sign stuff long enough.
Okay, Councillor Sherry.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it should, my personal opinion, I wouldn't support referring it back to staff if you want to amend it here this evening. The other concern that's also relates to size, which we're not dealing right now in specific, that I would have a concern, and it was raised at our last council meeting here, where a developer on a major project, and I'll say it's a Harbour Park deal, where they were looking for a greater, my understanding, a greater number of signage because of the WCB regulations, as it's they need a barrier in between the construction and the public that were walking by, and that hasn't. I don't know if staff can identify where that is covered off with this proposal before us this evening as well. But to refer, I'm not prepared at this particular time.
Okay, I'm not prepared to support the referral, and also I will have problem reducing the sign size from the staff recommendation. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. The only reason that I made a motion to refer this back to staff was because I was led to believe by staff that this was the only proper procedural way of doing it. I'll deal with it tonight if you like, but that's the understanding I have. Maybe staff can correct me on that.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Patchy, the reason I suggested referring back to staff was so that to ensure that I get the wording right as to what the Council's wishes are. But I think your intent was quite clear in the way you phrased it, that we can make that change tonight if that's Council's wish.
Your Worship, and it's entirely up to Council, but I would just also remind you that the process involved a whole bunch of stakeholders. Those stakeholders were part of what we recommended. If Council would like to refer it back and have them give input again, that's another possibility.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That was my question, whether there was an advantage to referring it back to seek more input, or what the advantages would be, and Mr. Swaby has clarified that for me.
Okay, so first on the amendment was to refer. Yeah, the request. The motion was to refer back, and so on the motion to refer, all those in favour. Vote recorded. All those opposed, the motion fails. And now we'll deal with the motion that's staff recommendation on there, which is Councillor Sherry. Sorry, go ahead.
First of all, we decided we're not referring the bylaw back to staff for review. Okay. There was a request by Councillor Padgey to cut the size in half.
Right.
Okay. I don't know if he wants to continue along that vein. And my concern, as it relates to what we were dealing with Harbour Park Mall and the number of signs, because the way I read the bylaw, you're only limited to 1 or 2 signs per street or whatever it is. And what ramification with the WCB regulations, and that as it relates to that specific location.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Worship, the sign variance that Council dealt with a few weeks ago would still require a variance under the proposed bylaw. I forget the exact square footage of that particular variance, but it was essentially to cover the entire hoarding which is required by WCB to secure the work site in signage, and would exceed the 100 square feet, which is the maximum that is being proposed through this bylaw. Different sort of circumstance, I think, to what Councillor Patchy is proposing by way of putting a limitation on the maximum size for single-family duplex triplex and fourplex houses, so a slightly different issue than what the proposed amendment was.
I realize that because we're dealing with two different issues here. One is as it relates to residential construction. My concern was raised, and the individual raised it at our last council meeting as it related to a major commercial or industrial project that are being required by WCB. So you're telling me that the individual needs to come back to sit down with staff and figure out what the total square footage of hoarding or signage that the individual would like to have around that site, and then that request for a development variance permit would come back to council.
Yes, Your Worship, the proposed bylaw sets limits on the size of signage for real estate signs and construction signage. A developer would have the option of applying for larger signs in any circumstance through the variance permit process. So the bylaw, as proposed, we think will cover most circumstances, but it is always the option for the developer to come and apply to council for larger signs.
Well, I just had to inform everybody that I did have a phone call from the individual and was asking what the process is. So, like, I told him to come back and talk to staff and take it from there.
Okay, Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. Well, what I would like to do then is make a motion to amend what is being proposed strictly by reducing the total signage from 100 to 50 square feet, and only in the case of single family and multifamily, that's 2 to 4 units, in order to reduce the visual clutter that would come with it. And I so move.
Which section of the bylaw?
That would be where it pertains to construction site signage.
6.2. Yes.
Yeah. Hang on.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? You're going to second it? Okay. Discussion on that. Councillor Oldham, did you want? Okay, go ahead.
I guess I just wanted an explanation from staff on how they envisioned this working to at least encourage an orderly display of contractors' and suppliers' signs on especially the smaller sites that seem to be the bone of contention and the ones that people are worried about. Do you see these regulations as is or as amended as providing encouragement for some kind of organized display that is informative as well as instead of offensive?
Your Worship, the draft bylaw that was as initially proposed, the area of the construction site signs was the area that probably we received the most feedback on. The binder that has been in Councillor's office for the last week, a lot of the the commentary was on that signage. The way a number of people described it was that the site superintendent on a construction site is the one who is responsible for the signage on that site, and that the contractors who have been the successful bidders on that particular project have what are referred to as tack-up signs. And these are signs that they use, they'll order 1,000 of them at a time, and each contractor has his own tack-up signs. What we got a lot of negative commentary back from the construction industry was that the requirement that all of this signage be amalgamated into a maximum of 3 signs, or that all signs be of equal size, was unworkable, and it would pose as a problem for staff in terms of enforcing equal size signs on construction sites. So the commentary from the construction industry was very strongly that those provisions as proposed would not work. And they did not object to the total maximum size. They said they could live with that, and they could live with reducing the maximum size of a single sign on their property. And this would fit within the 16 square feet or 1.5 meters squared that's proposed. But it was the requirement for all signs to be the same size or all signage to appear on a maximum of 3 signs that they said those 2 provisions would just become unworkable. And there was, as I say, considerable feedback from the construction industry on that, and that's why we've made the changes as proposed.
Okay, and as I understand the amendment, and I just want to get it clear, the combined area of all construction signs would not exceed 100 square feet on projects larger than a single-family residence or a 4-unit multifamily residence, right? So that would stay 50 square meters, 50 square feet only for those smaller projects. Okay, thank you. I can support the amendment.
And as a supplement, strictly in terms of numbers, Your Worship, if we kept it at 100 square feet, some of these so-called tag-ons, could be as small as 2 by 2, in which case we'd end up on a small site with up to 25 signs, feasibly. Not that's going to happen, but it would be possible. In the case of slightly larger signs, 3 by 3 feet, that would end up in 11 signs on a relatively small site. Just to put it in perspective, I think 50 square feet would be more than sufficient for those smaller construction sites. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Your Worship, I still would like a bit more time on that one. I do understand the visual impact of these signs. They are very temporary. 10 by 10 or 100 square feet. We can fit a lot of signs on, and I know it. The construction industry has always used them to support their businesses, a small form of marketing. I understand from staff's input that the construction industry has looked for this. I know signs have been a bit of a bone of contention lately. The sign reviews have been going on for some 3 or 4 years. I wish this to come forward. I don't think I can support it at this time.
Okay. I have Councillor Petch. Okay, just before you do, I just want to say that I also will have trouble. I understand Councillor Patchy's motion, and I understand the reason he wants to do it. But really, the construction business doesn't get an opportunity to promote their services and their company all that often, and I'm just hesitant to reduce it beyond what staff has mentioned. And I think the important thing for me was that staff said that this was something that was negotiated with the construction industry, and I would be remiss if I supported it because of that issue alone. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I just finish by saying that every story has 2 sides, and while obviously this is not intended to impede the construction industry in any way, shape, or form, but I think it would behoove us to remember that there are also other people who have nothing to do with those particular construction sites that have to live with it, who have to look at it every day for the time it's up. And, there is a combination time-wise when it's not too difficult to combine the length of times that real estate signage can be up, and then it being exacerbated by the construction signs being up for a certain period of time as well. I just want to make sure that I'm not misunderstood as wanting to put an impediment in the way of the construction industry. That's the last thing on my mind. But there is this very important social aspect of visual pollution and visual clutter, and I think to reduce the small sites from 100 to 50 are not going to make a difference to the construction industry whatsoever. It makes it tidier. It makes it more difficult to come up with the clutter that some of these signs will do, and so I just hope you'll support it.
Okay, we've got 2 more speakers now, but before I do, Ms. Harrison, I'll just put you on notice that when we come to an end, we'll get you to read the most recent amendment that's currently on the floor. So pressure's on. Councillor Sherry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I could support the amendment to take it from 100 to 50, because one looks on page 102, where we start talking about real estate signs, and real estate signs for single-family, duplex, fourplex is only 16 square feet that they're allowed. But if we go into 5 units or more dwelling units, but less than 10, they're allowed 32 square feet. So this is even larger than what we're allowing on a real estate sign in relation to 10 units or less. So in that rationale, I can support the 50 square foot.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. As I understand, considerable work has been done with staff and members of the construction industry to come to these recommendations. 2 4x8 conventional sheets of plywood would be 64 square feet, which would be 14 square feet larger than what the amended recommendation is. And it just occurs to me that with the 100 square feet, regardless of the size of the project in question, is something that's been arrived at, that's been discussed and negotiated with the very industry that we're suggesting that we're supporting. I won't be able to support the amendment from 100 to 50 for units of 4 or smaller as it is before us.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, if I might, when we had the seminar with regard to the signage, you came forward with an inventory of signage throughout the city for different sites. How many of those sites would you say were in excess of 50 feet for the smaller properties?
Your Worship, that inventory was primarily to do with the real estate marketing signs, and we actually broke it down to up to 32 square feet, and there were 20 signs in that category. Between 32 and 100 square feet, there were 24 in that category, and above 100 square feet, there were just 5 signs. So the majority were in that bracket between 32 and 100, and that's what the amendments are proposing, that as the size of the project increases, the size of the signage could also increase along with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Unger.
Yeah, we keep hearing about eyesores. These signs go up no earlier than 5 days before construction starts and no later than 5 days after completion. And they are temporary. They're not there permanently. And the eyesore that is on a construction site is buildings partially completed with plywood sides, trucks driving in over sidewalks, and a lot of mud and dirt around. Those are eyesores, but that's what we put up with, that a sign will not be an eyesore in comparison to the rest of a construction site. And I cannot support the amendment.
Okay, basically, my understanding is the amendment is to reduce the signage from 100 square feet to 50 square feet. But Ms. Harrison, would you like to...
So the wording that I have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Section 62A of Sign Amendment Bylaw 2010 number 7118 be amended to include that for single-family dwelling, duplex, triplex, or fourplex, the combined area of all signs does not exceed 50 square feet.
I don't have the metric conversion.
Okay. Councillor Oldham.
That would apply to construction signs, right? The amendment?
That's correct. Section 62A is
construction signs.
Construction signs. So it's in addition to or changing 62A3 to include that restriction.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, or Your Worship, I don't believe Councillor Johnson got an answer to her question, which was about construction signs. And I know the study that was presented at the sign review was about real estate signs. So even if you don't have the statistics, I was just wondering if I could ask through you, Your Worship, to staff, did you have any impression in reviewing those signs just how large or intrusive or any impressions that you have about the use of construction signs on the various sites you looked at?
Mr. Tucker?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Holdham, for the most part, the larger signs appeared to be the general contractor on the site. For example, Leadcore, building the Rexall on Bowen Road, for example, having a larger sign, and the financiers for the projects tended to have larger signs that the project. Sometimes the supplier of building materials would have a larger sign. Usually the sub-trades had smaller signs, but there were, and those tended to be hung on the fences, and they were of what are referred to by the industry as tack-up signs. So the maximums that we were proposing here seem to fit within, and we have, again, from the feedback we received, the dimensions and so on that are being talked about seem to be acceptable to the general contractors and the financiers and so on for the project. So it actually seemed to be largely self-policing, I would say.
So the smaller projects already have the smaller signs.
That's correct.
And we're unlikely to see financier signs on single-family dwellings anyway, are we?
Usually not, no.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I see no further questions. So on the amendment, which is essentially to reduce the size of the construction signs, all those in favour? We have Councillor Holdham, Councillor Sherry, and Councillor Patchy. All those opposed? We have Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Johnson, Mayor Rattan, Councillor Unger, and Councillor Kipp. The motion fails. Would somebody like to make a motion?
We can now move again on with the list of introduction of bylaws. That sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7118 to amend the regulations of construction signage be given first reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. I see no further discussion. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
That sign amendment bylaw 2010-7118 be given second reading.
Seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Move that sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7118 third reading.
Seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. We'll move down actually into other business. And at the special meeting of Council held Monday, 2010, November 1, Councillor Kipp put forward the following notice of motion that Council direct staff to start the process of a core service review. And maybe that would be best to take these in seriatim. Yeah, okay. So if somebody would like to move that to get it on the floor.
I'd like to move the council direct staff to start the process of the court service review.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Johnson, you're not on this one. The next one is Councillor Sherry.
Mr. Chairman, I'll support the motion of the core service review. And what I crystal ball the core review would be that we would need to ask for proposals from an outside source to come in to review the city's operation, i.e. the department, if they take a look at it. And I think if we got a hold of the procedure that was recently used in Penticton to outline the parameters as to what we would like to see. and to have a review of the total operation of the City of Nanaimo, to see if the City of Nanaimo is in fact doing the necessary things that are related to the operation of a city. And I would hope that they would, under this review, would be able to identify in the various departments, have we enough staff, or are we too heavy with staff? And as it relates to the function, as it relates to a proper operation of the community. And the reason I support it would give us a global picture from outside, and hope to identify if we are on target or off target, where we are, where we can make amendments to, and give the satisfaction to staff that they're right on as it relates to how we're operating. Without a review, I just don't think that we're doing justice to the community. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that I believe if we systematically review the services, we can redesign the mix that we use. We've progressively taken on more and more responsibilities of delivering services, for example, homeless issues, and those that are very key topic issues right now. And those have been devolved from other various government levels down to us. And I'm wondering with this, we would review the financial, the document, legislative review, city comparisons, staff surveys, and then internal, external interviews, and reviews that, and set our sort of core policies for the community. I think it's timely during this bad economy. We have to look at what we're doing, how we're functioning, and it's about function. So I obviously support the motion.
Okay, Councillor Holden.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Kipp has put forward two interesting motions here. The second one, it's not on the floor yet, but it is to report on the process of a zero-based budget process. And I can certainly support that. I think that we should be doing that at least once a term, if not every year. But this one that's on the floor now is to start the process of a core service review. That requires an outside consultant. It's relatively expensive. It does not and would not produce any results for the 2011 budget. At least it's hard to imagine that it would. It's an interesting process, and I think it would be useful to do at the beginning of a term, perhaps, to look at the direction that a council wanted to take the city. But in our case, we would be getting the findings and the results with just a few months to go before an election that may produce a council with different priorities. So I'm not sure that the results of such a process would be very useful. They might be, but who knows? We're, as council, the ones that set the priorities, and I certainly do not want to ask an outside consultant to tell us what our priorities should be. So I would rather focus on determining whether our priorities are being implemented. And I think the second motion that's coming forward here will give us a chance to do that. This one, I think, takes us off in another direction and is not really appropriate to be doing this at the end of a term.
Okay, I just like to, there's a couple of points I'd like to raise, and then there's quite a bunch of speakers here too. And that is that I assume that this first one would require an outside consultant. And I think the important thing to recognize is that when this review was done by Penticton, the cost of that survey, I understand, was something in the neighborhood of $70,000. Nanaimo was larger, and perhaps with, I assume, a larger staff, and so I would suggest that something approaching six figures would be realistic to have this done. And I just wondered if council as a whole is supportive of that kind of a financial commitment. The other thing I'm just a little bit concerned about, and I respect Councillor Kipp's reasoning behind it, but next week, maybe I might just ask staff. It's my understanding that next week we're scheduled to receive the first drafts from staff on the 2011 taxes. Would you like to comment on that?
Your Worship and Council, staff are presenting the draft 2011 to 2015 financial plan at the Finance and Policy Committee next Monday, the 15th.
Okay. Next Monday, the 15th. So I just, with respect, I was just wondering whether this is a little premature. I would certainly like to hear the 2011-2015 financial forecast from staff before we committed to this, particularly in view of the extremely high cost of it. Anyway, those are my two bits. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I concur with Councillor Holdham in that I have to admit the timing of this has thrown me off somewhat. It came out of the blue, and I really do believe, especially since we're right in the middle of the 2011 sequence, that I find it distracting to say the least. I think this is very valid, but I think it's valid at the beginning of the term of a council, and I think at the best that this would be a chore for the next council at the end of 2011. So I shall not be supporting number one. As far as, are we talking about zero budgeting?
Not yet. No.
Not yet. Okay.
Just first one's on the floor. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also agree with the colleagues Holdham and Patchy that the timing is wrong right now. But I'd like to, at some point, have a report from staff as to what the suggested terms of references for core budgeting, and what are our core services. So terms of references would be great.
Go ahead.
Your Worship, if the motion passed, I presume Council would, or I wouldn't want to presume to do anything, but we assume that Council would expect staff to bring in suggested terms of reference, and then from that, if they were approved, then we would proceed to select an outside consultant. So if the motion passed, we would ask Council to approve the terms of reference.
Okay. Councillor Kipp.
I want to disagree with my colleagues on timing. I think it's absolutely perfect timing. We stumbled around for a while and set some of our priorities, and then, of course, the priority list got changed. This is about core focus. This is about having someone look at our departments that isn't from internal, that is external to it, that does this for a living. It's like when I have an auditor come in and look at my company, an accountant or something, I get an outside set of eyes to look at my corporation, as small as it may be. The approaches are financial review. They are document review. This would actually give us, and the purpose of this is some of our departments might be broadly brushing tourism, marketing, sports marketing, right? And this will bring focus. The whole idea of a core review is to focus the corporation's direction, to find out that we're doing these broad things, and now to bring it down to where we can accomplish something, get things done. We have struggled for 3 years on a sign bylaw. There's no focus to that. I'm looking at this and saying, this is perfect. We could take this and review our last 2 years, review the 5-year plans that we've done, review the future 5-year plans, and set up the next councils to have an absolute understanding of the core values this community is getting for the $140 million a year. And my whole purpose on this is not to beat staff down or anything, but it's to get to some function. It's to bring that focus. This is absolutely, we've got a year here before silly season really gets its little cluster of votes at the end of November. And this would give an external view to come and see what our city's doing in financial documentation, legislation, city comparisons, staff surveys, and these are staff surveys anonymous. Let's hear from everybody. And if it's $100,000 in my mind out of $140 million to review what we do is cheap. It's not even 1%. It's just so low on the totem pole compared to what we spend on lawyers' opinions and lunches sometimes. I think this is absolutely important, and I think if we pass this up, and to speak of the zero-based budgeting, staff has all that information. They give us lunch and learn reports all the time, and that tells us also that they can continue to do that, and I can talk to that later. But this approach to business analysis is hugely important, especially during these times when municipal governments are taxed and left with provincial and federal duties. We struggle with all of those externals like our train and our marketing and all of those things. We struggled with this convention center and the hotels. I want to bring focus to our departments, and therefore I think it's absolute perfect timing for this. And it hasn't come out of the blue. I've talked about triple bottom line accounting and reviews of services, management organizational structural reviews from the day I entered this council. I put on paper on busting bureaucracy. I put down paper on organizational structural review. So to say this has come out of the blue, I guess I dressed in blue today, but it's not out of the blue. It's been on the top of my topic for 2 years. So maybe I've been on my own sort of path here. But
okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. To the best of my knowledge, the city hasn't conducted a holistic, independent core services review for our corporation, which has grown immensely. Certainly just in the brief 5 years that I've been on council. And I think when we speak of responsibilities to the community and responsibilities to our citizens and our taxpayers, that a core services review of our undertakings is absolutely imperative, and I'm not certain that, or I'm certain that there could be an argument made for any 3-year term that no 1 year is the right year to do it or not to do it. But I could certainly suggest that for the incoming council, which is 1 year away, should this process be commenced now, it would at least give that incoming council a baseline from where this one was, where our last 3 to 5 years efficiencies have been, where it might be suggested that we could improve moving forward as a new council. I've been on 2 new councils now, and on both occasions I think that we've probably struggled and been challenged as a whole for what our collective mandate is or was. So I don't know that now is a bad time. I think now is a critical time in the future of our city, and there is no time like the present, as far as I'm concerned, to commence a core services review of our city's operations. I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, Councillor Sherry.
To you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Kenning, since your tenure with the City of Nanaimo, because when I look, you're one of the longest serving senior staff that we've had here. In your tenure, has the City of Nanaimo conducted a core review?
Not in the time I've been here, not the type of review that I'm hearing council members describe here, no.
So, and with my short tenure on council, I do not recall doing a core review. And what Mr. Kenning described previously, should this motion pass, then they would, my understanding would be that staff would be requested to do a synopsis, as the words he indicated, as to what would be required for a review, with a matter of coming back to council to double check to make sure this is in fact the grounds that council is requesting a review to go. And the thing is, as it relates to the other item, that's item B type of thing, I think that the current staff are dealing with that, because what we're doing is right now it's indicated that we are going to be going into the review of the budget for 2011. Okay, there's items already come before the council as it related to expenditures that's been requested for the 2011 budget. And the council, in its wisdom, referred that matter back to staff to be included in requests for extension of services. And staff, hopefully, and they've done it in the past, is that they bring forward a budget from within their department, and if there's expansion to they would like, or we should be doing more, then those requests are come forward, and we're dealing with the item at the time. But I think it's important to, you say, well, it's the last year of the term, this term, to do it. But I certainly would have felt better if we had a review come in and a presentation made of what's expected out of a review, and with the downloading of your provincial and your federal government to issues as it relates to our community. We're the ones that are getting stuck with, and where's the funds coming from? Are we there? And how many departments do we need to are duplicating certain items where we could combine those items all under one umbrella? So we go one store shopping instead of having to go to 2 or 3, or somebody comes out and say, well, we're doing it over in our department, why are you guys doing it in this department? So it's just to clarify in my mind as to where the organization is, and is there some adjustments that we should take a look at.
Okay, Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is really a fascinating debate, and great topics and points coming up. I just would like to, if I can ask through you, Al, or Mr. Kenning, your background is in finance, right? In fact, you have a chartered accountancy. And colleagues of yours would conduct this kind of review for other municipalities, I suppose, would they? That training provides them with that ability?
Yes and no, Your Worship. I think that CA firms, certainly their consulting arms, would do this kind of work. It's, I think, particularly challenging to find a consultant that will do justice to this, because you're asking for a pretty unique set of skills, somebody that understands the municipal environment, and that council members and the communities themselves set service levels and priorities, and also understands, as Councillor Kipp talks about, the triple bottom line, in that a decision to proceed with a service in a municipal environment isn't always about the bottom line. It's about providing services that may cost money, and want to do them anyway. So I think sometimes the private sector consultants are challenged in that environment. So I think it's going to be a bit challenging to find somebody that has a good handle and will be able to provide helpful information to council. But if this motion passes, we'll certainly try and search that person out.
Okay, and following along, Mr. Kenning, when you were asked the question if we had ever had a core service review since you've been here, you said no. But has a council ever asked for a core review to be conducted?
Not to my knowledge, Your Worship. I actually consider it part of my task every day to try and make sure that the staff are providing efficient and effective services to the community and on behalf of council. So as I say, I consider that part of my tasks. And so while we have never had an outside consultant do it, I think the former city manager took that upon himself as an important role as well.
See, Mr. Chairman, Your Worship, where I'm going with this is that I think we have a lot of talented staff in our city, and especially, as well, in the finance department and in our senior management. And I think we should ask them. I think we should ask them if we really want to conduct this kind of review, core service review, and it's a good process. I think we should ask our staff to conduct it for us. If we're dissatisfied with the kind of report they give to us, then maybe we should seek some outside help. But we've got expertise here that we haven't even tapped, and we should at least ask our own staff first.
Okay. I guess one of the things that I'd like to see, and I don't know the kind of time it would take, but a staff report really, how much time realistically would be looking at if we did recruit an outside consultant to do this? And secondly, I'm not asking for the staff report now, but I'm saying the two things that I think we should ask is how much time is realistic to accomplish this core review by an outside consultant, and two, what would be a reasonable estimate of the cost to do that? And I know the figure's been suggested somewhere around $100,000, but I mean, is that an accurate figure? And that's something that maybe staff should look at. I've got.
Want me to refer this back to staff?
Well, that's an option too, but let's run through more speakers. We've got Councillor Patchy next.
Thank you, Worship.
I think we should.
I'm starting to change my mind a little bit when I'm listening here. There obviously is nothing wrong with a core review. Again, I question the timing. I think that still should have come much earlier in our term, and I think we're a little late at this point. But I want to ask Councillor Kipp a question, because I understood at some point, I'm trying to figure out the connection, if any, between A and B. I know we're not talking about B yet, but I think somebody asked you if this was the right sequence to do this, and you, if I remember seeing an email, came back saying, no, this core review has to happen first, and then we can go and talk zero budget process. What is your reasoning for that, if I'm correct?
Well, if I can answer that. First, I think you have to understand what you're doing. So you've got to review what you're doing first to see where you're coming from. The zero-based budgeting then, I guess, would follow in that context. You understand what you need to do. It's more, it just means to me that we review what we need to do, what are functions we want to be good at, and then with the zero-based budgeting, we can get each department to explain how they're going to do that to us. So I think they go hand in hand more, and I was somewhat, with the input we have had, and because I sent it out a few days back, we've had a bit of time to review it. My concern is that we honestly sometimes, I don't really know exactly what we do even in the city. We do a ton of stuff. And I use the examples of our different departments having marketing tools at their disposal. When we had sports marketing in Parks and Rec, we had economic development doing it. We have a function outside of us that's doing tourism, right? Tourism in Nanaimo. And so I want to review those and find out which are the important ones to our city, to the operation of our city under these current economic times. The zero-based budgeting, I think, I totally disagree with Councillor Holdham's view on it. Staff is busy. They're constantly telling us they're busy. It's hard to take on anything else or get stuff, even to get studies done on time. And that's why I believe this, having that external set of eyes come in and look at it. It's like an audit of our operations. And so the zero-based budgeting then, once we know what we want to do as core services, water is hugely important to us. That's a core service we need to supply. Policing, fire departments, roads, infrastructure, garbage. But there other things that we can deliver more effectively, different ways. So the review of what we do, and then breaking it right down in zero budget, and so it makes someone justify the increases over a previous year. Traditional incremental budget just means last year's spending is there, I just have to justify what I want a new spend this year. We've never gone back and said, why am I spending last year's money? I don't even know if all of our accounts actually reflect what we spend our money on. We have budget items, line items that say we're spending this. Do they all reflect that? I don't know. It's hard to tell. So we get to what we want to do as a corporation, the core service, and we analyze it right down to the ground. And staff already has a zero-based analysis. I think they go hand in hand. But with my peers, I agree that there's a lot of different ways we can look at this. I want to start the process of core service review, and that means getting 3 quotes, maybe just based it on the Penticton model for now. And there's an example from Helos. They did it. There's an example. We could send that out to 3 companies and say, can you do this at this level? Then they've quoted oranges to oranges. We deal with the person we like, and we get down to brass tacks on it. And throwing $100,000 out is like putting a line in a school of fish and hoping you catch them. I want to know for sure, and that's why I say start the process, which means to me get some quotes, find out who can do this for us.
Did you have any other questions for Councillor Pecci?
A follow-up. All that makes good sense, and I would grant you that if there were to be a core review, it could not be an internal one. It has to be from the outside. I agree with you on that one. Timing is still something that has me worried a bit, and I got to tell you, some of the examples that you've used, like water being one, the more important one that we have actually. I don't need a core review to know that that is where it should be going. I'm quite confident that it is, as I am with some other issues as well. You mentioned the tourism focus. You made it almost sound as if tourism was all over the place, and there really is a determined focus right now on bringing tourism together as it should be, and so that wouldn't be part of a core review for me. That I see no value in that, but hey, I'll be listening to wise men like Councillor Sherry, so I guess I can support it.
Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I guess I would like to address the timing, and that is if we leave it to the next council, they would have the review during their first year, and they'd get into the second year exactly like we are now. I think the best legacy we could leave the next council is have something available for them that they can start off with it. We've got to remember this is for the 2012 budget we're looking at, which this council will start before a new council takes over, and we can give that new council a very good start. I think we have to set the table for them, a review of what do we do and how do we do it and why do we do it, because as Councillor Kipp has mentioned a couple of times, there's government downloading from the higher levels of government. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're doing things that were never done before, and when we do them, and then we have to add on to the tax bill, and council is the villains, when really in effect it is the guys in the higher up levels of government that are just shoveling it down on us. So I think we have to determine the best level of service we can get our community, and now is the best time to get it started, because we are talking that it would not be the 2011 budget, which we're already to go into, be for 2012, and that will be for a new council, and we can pave the way for them to have something to start with, which we don't have at the present time.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
And again, Your Worship, I could support a core review, subject to staff writing a terms of reference for us. I'd like to see that first before we jump into a core review, and I think that's only fair to all of us. And I don't know if Mr. Kenning would like to comment on that.
Well, I think it's been an excellent debate, Your Worship. There's been good points made on both the yes and the no. I think there's probably some unreasonable expectations about what a core review would accomplish. And when I hear Councillor Unger say that it'll help us deal with downloading, I wish.
Knowing what we have to do and what we should be doing.
But I think that the terms of reference that I would recommend for council would address the issue of helping council determine what it believes are core services. I don't think there's really much help for the community to have a consultant, particularly a right-wing consultant, which they probably will be, come in and tell you that you shouldn't be providing housing for the homeless. I mean, what good does that do? You know you want to do it. So I think that there's important, yes, the terms of reference are important, and I think the important thing will be helping council focus on what you think are the strategic objectives and core services.
Okay, Councillor Kipp, did you want to?
So just that I put down in there a 6-step approach that comes.
Sorry,
yes,
I just want to make sure she's finished her.
Well, if I could make an amendment to the motion to state then, subject to staff.
Well, I think Councillor Besser, I'm sorry, Councillor Sherry may want to make a motion in due course anyway.
Okay.
So that's, otherwise we're going to have motions for motions for motions. Sorry, Councillor Kipp, did you have something more to add to what you've already said?
Just that the 6-step approach is a framework, and it's there. It starts with financial review, document review, legislative review. It talks about other city comparisons, staff surveys, and internal external reviews. That is a framework.
Okay. Councillor Sherry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've been bandying this thing around, and some can support some and not the others. So, and Mr. Kenning brings up the point of, what is being requested in a core review from council. So my amendment to the motion would be that council request staff to start the process of a core service review with a report back to council on the contents and estimated costs.
Seconded? Okay. We have motions on the floor, and we'll go on.
That's an amendment
to refer.
Motion.
You're saying? Saying? And okay, do you want to just vote on that? We've got a couple more speakers that. Councillor Oldham, do you want to add your one on there?
Well, I think I've said most of what I was wanted to get out. I'm just triggered, I guess, by Mr. Kenning's example of having a consultant come in and say that perhaps as a municipality we shouldn't be providing any land for social housing or social services or any involvement in that, and we could have a consultant from with another stripe come in and say that we're spending way too much on protective services and we should be spending more on social services and so on. In other words, I'm now starting to see what the problem is here and what the issue could become. We're the ones that are responsible to the community. We're the ones that are supposed to provide the political direction in the best sense of the term. We did have a consultant come in at the beginning of this term to help us with process, George Cuffin Associates. And he provided some good advice, some of which we took, some of which we ignored. Because we have to consider who we are as individuals, who we're representing, what's important for our community. That's our job. I don't know how an outside consultant is going to help us with that. I could see bringing in an outside consultant to determine, to help us with a perceived issue. A problem that came up, say, through zero-based budgeting. We're faced with a staff that won't do anything or won't help us achieve our objectives. But we don't have such an issue here. So again, I can't even support the amendment because I'm now realizing that I think this is this kind of core service review by an outside independent and totally unaccountable individual is not what we need right now.
Okay. There's a motion to refer on the floor, moved by Councillor Sherry and Councillor Apache. Councillor Bestwick, did you want to make a comment?
I think I've been on there for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you would, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments that to Councillor Holdham's point that, yes, we brought in an outside consultant, and to his own words, we took advantage of some of his recommendations and some we didn't. I'm not so sure that we're suggesting that the core services review provider would be from the left or the right or the middle or wherever, and I wouldn't want to throw a bone out there that this person is going to tell us, or persons or corporation, that we shouldn't be doing protective services or work with the homeless or providing them opportunities in our community. I think that that's an irresponsible statement. A core services review is going to identify efficiencies, deficiencies, growth, opportunity, past, present, and future as we grow. And I certainly know from what I've gleaned over 5 years that our staff are incredibly skilled and talented, but are incredibly overtaxed. And to have an external agency, of which we would have more than one submission, I'm sure, for a role such as this, we would be able to choose on our own volition of multiple applicants. And that would protect staff. That would keep them at arm's length. That would remove any concerns for staff being taken away from current tasks and responsibilities, from having preconceived ideals or notions. And as Councillor Holdham said, we don't have to accept any recommendations. This is just simply an opportunity to set the terms of reference, if we choose to adopt some of them or none of them, for a future council coming in. I happen to think that the timing is absolutely perfect to be able to prepare that council for when they hit their second year, with their feet running, whomever they may be, will have this information to be able to use as a guideline if they choose, or not if they choose not to. And so I will be supporting proceeding with a core service review undertaking heading into 2011. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It was moved by Councillor Sherry, seconded by Councillor Apache to refer. To amend, I'm sorry.
To amend, and the amendment is that Council requests staff to start the process of a core service review with a report back to Council on the contents and estimates as it relates to the costs.
I second the amendment.
No, but I think it actually has been seconded by Councillor Apache already. Do you have the motion there? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Kipp opposed and Councillor Holdham opposed. Balance of council in favor. Sorry?
We're opposed for different reasons.
Okay. So that's and staff I understand has got that down. So we'll see with that one. So let's move on to B then, and 19B, that Council directs staff to report on the process of a zero-based budget. Does somebody want to move that? Okay, someone want a second? Sorry.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yep.
We had voted on the motion to amend the original motion, but we had not voted on the motion as amended. So we still require one more vote on item A.
voted on the amendment.
We voted to amend the motion, now we have to vote on the amended motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, it was a replacement motion, so you don't need to vote on it again.
I would have to withdraw my motion.
Ms. Harrison, do you have a comment on this point?
My understanding was the original motion was not withdrawn, so Councillor Sherry was making a motion to amend it by adding the portion about with a report back to council. So at this point, because that passed, we would be voting on the full motion that includes that statement, that additional wording.
Okay, question on it. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Oldham and Councillor Kipp opposed. Balance council in favor. Now we'll move into the request that.
To move the next motion.
Okay.
Second. That is to direct staff to report on the process of the zero-based budget. Very similar to the last motion that council just passed, to report back on what it would take to do it. Question?
Okay, do we want to, Councillor Sherry, did you have something for this one? And Councillor Patchy?
Thank you. My question would be to staff, and in particular to Mr. Clements, the Director of Finance, as to what kind of work is involved here. Are you prepared to do this? Can you handle this? Enlighten me a little bit as to what the scenario would be. Or the city manager.
The Director of Finance is more than capable of answering, and I'll leave him to
I know he is.
Thank you, Your Worship. Zero-based budgeting has been around for a long time, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To implement a true zero-based budgeting program within the city of Nanaimo would be a pretty complicated task. We do a lot of stuff already that contains elements of what would be considered part of traditional zero-based budgeting. But to go to the complete extent of a full zero-based budget, which involves creating multiple decision packages essentially for every level of activity within the city, is something we probably could not do with the existing staff. It would be a real challenge to do with the current staff we have on hand. I would think that I would only be guessing, we'd probably need another person or two to help us put those kinds of packages together for council. But that's one of the things that certainly we can consider as part of the motion, which is to put together some information for council on what it is that it would take to do the exercise.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oldham.
Yes, Your Worship. Well, in spite of that gloomy forecast, I can support this motion and have been through what were called, at least, zero-based budgeting processes twice before, once long ago on school board, and then in the early years of my service here. It does mean a lot more work for council. It means really digging in. It means looking at every service and every level at which we wish to provide that service, if we wish to continue to provide it. But I think the kinds of materials that we normally get in our budget packages, if handled somewhat differently and if we as council dug into them more deeply, would serve most of the purposes of zero-based budgeting. We already get, as somebody mentioned already, I think Councillor Kipp, that we're already getting at our lunch and learn sessions something that approaches zero-based budgeting, at least the foundations of it, such as in the management review of the utilities last time. So I think we can do it. I don't see why it would take more people, but it will take more council time.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Well, part of my motion was to review this, and I think staff has a lot of the material at their fingertips too, and we have been getting good things. There's advantages to it. It detects inflated budgets, and that's one of the things when sometimes budgets are out of place, and not that I'm saying that is. I just think the fact that zero-based budgeting would give us a task based on some of our core services. So I brought the motions forward for excellent debate.
Okay, Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is sort of the 11th hour. The 2011 budget is about to come out, or the preliminary, and I would like to move an amendment that would add for the 2012 budget year.
Your Worship, I would actually second that, and my intent was to leave the 2011 process of incremental budget in place, and over our key schedule that Council has now, our key date schedule, and continuing having staff give us more sessions on those breakdowns of what each department silo organizational structure is, and review it from that point. Review it during 2011 with that core services review, and set some standards for 2012.
Okay, I think if we're going to do that, we'll have to have you make an amendment on it. That
I moved the amendment already.
And you seconded it? Okay. So any question first on the amendment here? That discussion on that one? Well, wait a minute. We've got Councillor Beswick, Councillor Johnston, and then Councillor Oldham. You can go back on. You're off now. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. I just find these two motions to be perhaps long overdue, but in relative terms, a necessary investment in our community's future. And this is simply an investment in what I understand that it may be thousands of dollars expended. It is simply an investment in how we advance our city in the decades to come. In terms of the really digging in is something that I would encourage and look forward to. And I think when we really dug in, Councillor Cherry, in fact, voted in favor of the budget that year. Is that correct, Councillor Cherry?
I believe so.
So with that by itself would be a good reason in my books to invest and to investigate and to work with our sleeves rolled up to do the best that we can for our community in terms of our budget, which is the most important document that we vote on every year. And those increases have grown exponentially. And so coupled with the CSR, Core Services Review, I think would be appropriate. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The motion reads that we're just asking staff to report on the process. So that's very simplistic to me. And, you know, I have no arguments with Councillor Kipp's recommendation, because after receiving his email qualifying the advantages of zero-based budgeting, I met with members of our finance department, and we are in fact doing almost all of the points that were named as advantages. So I think we have a wonderful staff now that is doing zero-based budgeting already. I don't think we have to go to the level of counting every pencil in every department, but I'd certainly like to see, you know, the process start. Have a review anyway.
Okay. Councillor Oldham, we'll give you the last shot.
Well, I understand we have an amendment. Is that what we were to delay this till 2012? And I agree with Councillor Johnston. I think we're close to be doing it now. It simply requires a little more work, or a fair bit more work on our side of the table here. So I can't support the amendment. I think we should proceed as far as we can with it anyway, with the next round of budgets, which starts next week. And I'm not sure why we would delay that for a year. We're nearly there now.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Actually, the point is that we are right in the midst of receiving 2011. Staff has worked to prepare the budget for us, and that's why I say we look at this incremental budget of 2011, start to zero base it, see where it goes, and then for 2012 we will have a better idea of what we will set the parameters of our budget as from a zero base context of reviewing this 2011 one as we start. So I think we're speaking the same thing. We want to start now, but we couldn't ask staff now to zero budget review 2011. They've got it prepared. So we're looking to look at zero base with this incremental budget, with my view of 2012 setting it more from a zero, starting at zeros. So
So, Ms. Harrison, just for clarification, you have, I assume that the motion now is that the amendment to the motion, I'm sorry, is that it be to reflect the inclusion up to for the 2012 budget?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So that's the motion that we're dealing with now?
It's the amendment we're dealing with now, and then we'll have to vote on the main motion. So, on the amendment, is everyone clear on that one? All those in favor? Opposed? I have Councillor Rattan and Councillor Holden opposed, balance of council in favor, so it passes. And on the main motion?
As amended.
As amended. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay. So we'll go into delegations pertaining to items not on the agenda up to 10 minutes, and we have just one, Mr. Greg McCarley, regarding storage container. Mr. McCarley.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Greg R. McCarley, and I'm a lifelong resident of Nanaimo and the area. I'm currently residing at 566 Stewart Avenue in Nanaimo. In 1986, I started a business called Westwood Metal Fabricators, which produces and installs architectural sheet metal, metal roofing, metal siding, and metal flashings for various structures and applications in the Nanaimo area and all of Vancouver Island. The business operated out of rented premises on East Wellington Road and Wilgers Road until 1997, when I purchased an I-2 zone building and property at 1710 Fleet Place, which is a small, non-visible cul-de-sac off of Wilgers Road in the Northfield industrial area. The zoning was, as I said, I-2, but it has come to my attention now that there are amendments and bylaws that have been attached that I was not aware of. In 1999, the business was incorporated as Westwood Metals Limited, and we currently have 18 full-time employees working on numerous job sites in Nanaimo and up and down the island. From 1997 to 2005, we had numerous tenants in the building, but Westwood Metals is now the sole occupant in the 5,500 square foot building that has a zero lot line, meaning that the owner and tenant are one of the same. In 2009, the ownership of the 1710 Fleet Place property was transferred to a corporation controlled by myself and my immediate family. From 1997 to the present, it is estimated that approximately $140,000 in total property taxes has been remitted on time to the City of Nanaimo. This does not include the user pay sewer and water charges we have remitted. The services received by us have been minimal at best, and even when it snows, the city does not even plow the cul-de-sac because city staff deems our road not to be a priority access road or not a through street, as they put it. I will add, we have never been delinquent or behind in any of our payments to the city with respect to our property taxes, business licenses, sewer, and water levies. In late September, a local bylaw enforcement officer visited the 1710 Fleet Place property and verbally informed me a complaint had been received about a container located on the property. The officer told me it was in contravention of bylaw 4000 Part 5 Regulations Clause 5.1.4 to 5.1.4.4, of which she said she emailed a partial page to confirm. As these were not part of the zoning at the time of purchase, I was astounded to find this information now, and that it had, and it was the result of a single complainant that obviously had a bee in his or her bonnet. As these complainants are anonymous, then it must be someone that is always complaining about something. I immediately canvassed the cul-de-sac and found zero resistance to the container. What really concerned me was at the time what I perceived to be downzoning of my property of the I-2 zoning with these bylaws attached and amendments. I was also appalled at the lack of communication from the policymakers to the stakeholders, as I honestly never knew this existed. I know now that some notices are posted in the local paper, and I now try and take time to read as many of these as possible, but I missed this one totally. I guess I was just trying to run my business. After the bylaw officer left, I took some time, which was actually less than 20 minutes of my time, to document how many of the same type of containers were located in the general neighborhood with the same zoning and use as mine. I was amazed to find that more than 30 in the area in that little of time, so I figured I must have really ticked off the complainant. I also found numerous containers on city-owned property on Labio Road. And in your official community plan document, Plan Nanaimo Map 1 Future Land Use Plan, the city yard is light industrial, which makes this the same as my property, so the rules should apply to all. In the years that I've owned the property, the cul-de-sac has been the subject of vandalism, petty theft on an almost nightly basis. We started to store objects in and on top of this container and have great success in reducing the criminal activity to almost zero. We also have made arrangements with the neighboring businesses located in the cul-de-sac with respect to truck access, parking, recycling, landfill refuse, and to eliminate congestion. One business will have a garbage bin, one will have a cardboard recycling bin, and I have a metal recycling bin, of which all businesses use each other's, therefore eliminating the need for multiple collection devices for every business. This project was initiated by myself and is reviewed constantly to assure that everyone is still happy with the arrangement. I add that city and staff were not involved at all, and Westwood Metals now estimates it recycles upwards of 97% of our waste, therefore eliminating the need for landfill. Westwood Metals is also a proud sponsor of many local charities and sports teams in the Nanaimo area. To sum up the presentation, we would like this container to remain as it is used for secure storage in an industrial area that is not visible to the public at all, unless they drive down the road and are actually looking for it. We will only be having one of these containers on our property. I don't think it will attract business to the city if you are purchasing a property and have it effectively downzoned by numerous bylaws and amendments which are attached at will at the city's discretion without properly informing the stakeholders. Also, I think there has to be a more effective way to communicate these to the stakeholders. And as the container is used solely for securing our products and services. That's basically it. So.
Okay, sir, just to mention, have you been in touch with staff concerning this? Did you, how much dialogue have you had with the staff members?
I've had none whatsoever. All she did was came down the one day, and I believe she took her findings back to the bylaw enforcement officer. I tried to phone her, but she's on holidays or something right now, so I'm not sure. Nobody's been down there, and nobody's visited me or anything else except for her the one day that she was there.
Does staff want to make a comment now? I've got a couple of questions. We have Councillor Unger, Councillor Patchy, Councillor Kipp. Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question to staff. Can you confirm that the rules and regulations on that property have changed from initial purchase and occupancy until now, that the rules have changed while the people are at that location?
Yes, Your Worship. It's as Mr. McCarley has explained. The rules were changed in 2004. A bylaw was brought in 4000.346 in 2004, and at that time Council adopted a bylaw which made storage containers prohibited use with the exception of emergency preparedness kiosks, which are located at the schools for in the event of an earthquake or other natural disaster. This was in response to Council direction at the time and concern. So as Mr. McCarley has described it is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. To staff as well. How many of these storage container places have we got at this point? And is Mr. McCarley correct when he says that they're not all being treated the same?
Absolutely, I would agree with Mr. McCarley's comments. I went out myself and drove through this neighborhood, and in Fleet Place, where Mr. McCarley has his business, I saw standing on his front area of his business, I could see at least 3 other. In the driving in there, I passed 2 other containers which were also in the light industrial area. He's described it accurately in terms of the complaint came in about this particular address, but there are at least a half dozen in spitting distance of his property, and I didn't do the adjoining streets as well, but it's as he's described it, absolutely.
Does that mean then that a bylaw enforcement officer only goes on the strength of a complaint and the others have not been complained about?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Mr. McCarley, your use for it is basically security for your supplies and your equipment. You've stated that. I just want to make a statement that I think people are using containers now for houses in different places, and it is an industrial use. I know there's actually a few storage places that use basically just containers, and I think it's a valid use. I understand when the bylaw came through in 2004, there was some concerns about unsightly areas, and that maybe they bordered on residential areas now. But I viewed Mr. McCarley's property, drove by, and I'm miffed to see that we somehow work on a complaint of this nature, because it really is an industrial site. There has been some changes since he's been there, and I don't know if we can refer Mr. McCarley back to staff to deal with something like this, find out if there's a grandfathering clause or something. I'm not certain what is available to us at this point.
I'd like to, if we could, see if staff would like to comment. What are the options now? Apparently, Mr. McCarley hasn't had a chance to get any staff feedback, and this would be a great time to do it. Who wants to go?
Your Worship, I would suggest that Council should request a staff report on containers, and we can report back on the history of it and the issues that surround having them now, including building code issues, equity to other mini storage uses that have to sprinkle their facilities, and how we can move forward with ones that currently are not known but are out there for sure.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. McCarley.
Councillor Oldham, did you want to do too? Sorry.
Just a question to staff from the delegation's information that on Labio Road we have the same containers on our property. And if you could please comment on that.
Your Worship, I don't have any comment on that. We can certainly look into that and report back in the report if Council would like.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oldham.
Worship, I'd move that we refer this item to staff for a report and recommendations on containers.
By 2015.
So
that we can.
Is there a seconder, please? That Councillor Kipp. Okay. Question: all those in favor of referral? Opposed? We will be referring it. Thank you, sir. It does look like an inequity, and I can assure you we're going to look at this one closely. And we're sorry for any inconvenience, but we've got to follow the regulations we have in place. But we'll come up with something that'll work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're now into the question period on agenda items only.
I hope Fred comes up.
Yeah, I think we should. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So, question period. These are agenda items only.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bill McKay. I'm from 2575 McCullough Road. The concern I've got, number one, is the issue of the sign bylaw. Number one, there was a gentleman here at the October 25th meeting, and he was from the Urban Design Group, which I believe is involved with the Port Place Mall redevelopment. He did lead to a question relative to fence hoarding signs, and I think that's what we're talking about here. The issue of fence hoarding is an imaginative way, a novel approach by some communities to enhance what is normally a very ugly work site, if you will. In Vancouver, they've been using it extensively for a number of years, and they use it for art, they use it for advertising, they use it for promoting the building that's going on that particular site. Courtenay, who has very restrictive sign bylaws, they also used it around the phase 2 of the Old House Village development. They used it to promote the facility. They used a number of graphics on it. It was very attractive, to be quite honest. There was also one that was used here. I'm a little disappointed that it was not included in the bylaw, and I noticed that staff talks about going to development variance permit for that type of signage, construction signage. There was this type of construction signage on just around the back corner here, a couple hundred feet away from us, around the Millennium Hotel. And there was about 1,500 square feet of this fence hoarding around that facility. So presumably, if that was done under development variance permit, then we would be able to go and look back and review council minutes where that development variance permit was reviewed by council.
Your Worship, there certainly isn't any development variance permit that was issued for that signage that Mr. McKay is referring to. It was actually council staff was under the understanding there was a moratorium until we brought forward amendments to the sign bylaw. Council then made a further amendment that we act reasonably when we review applications in the interim. We reviewed the Port Place Mall and didn't think it was reasonable and brought it to you as a variance application so that you could adjudicate it. Now we have new amendments to the sign bylaw that you're considering.
Okay. So one would presume that if that was not the case, then one could conclude that, again, not unlike the sign on the end of this building, that there's one set of rules for the city and there's another set of rules for private business. Would I be correct in saying?
Okay, well, first of all, you're dealing with something on the agenda, which is what you're speaking to now.
Correct.
Okay, but I don't recall the sign on this building being on the agenda.
No, but my point, hopefully my point will be taken, that on a city development, there was no development variance permit taken out, yet under the new bylaw, there's a suggestion that anyone wishing to have that type of signage would be required to go through the expense and the somewhat protracted process of a development variance permit. Why can't it just be included in the sign bylaw?
Okay, we've got Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. If I recall correctly, at one point not so long ago, the Millennium Hotel site, so-called, came up in a discussion when we had to grapple with the issue of where tourism buses were going to be parked. And it was at that point that our attention was drawn to that site, and we noticed Ledcor signs. I think they were. And if my memory serves me correctly, they were there illegally and they were taken down the same week.
These were not Ledcor signs. These were about 1,500 square feet of fence hoarding that basically said Millennium Hotel.
The Millennium, okay. Then we're talking about two different things. The one that I'm referring to were a number of 2x2 signs that were hung there. Maybe Mr. Kenning can refresh my memory on that, but that I believe the hotel site was given over temporarily to, was it BC Hydro?
That's correct, yes.
And somehow signs that should not have been up there were removed. But you're correct, the Millennium one is a different story, I agree. Two different things.
It should be something that should be looked at because it is a very novel and can be very attractive approach to construction site signage. And I'm disappointed that it's not here today.
Yeah.
Second question.
Sorry, Councillor Unger, did you have a question?
I just wanted to point out that the Millennium sign was not a city sign, so that your suggestion that there's different rules for the city than there is for private business is inaccurate. The Millennium sign was put up without approval, to the best of my knowledge, and they just went ahead and did it, so it never was a legal sign. I may be mistaken.
No, I'm fine with that. My only point was, and it was not intended to make that other than that, the point was that it was obviously put up without a development variance permit. Those type of signs aren't permitted or weren't permitted, and to suggest now that we have to do that would be, a different set of rules. Okay. My second question is relative to the core service review. Councillor Holdham suggested that staff perhaps review it. And then there was also a suggestion that staff are overtaxed as well as it stands right now. A number of months ago, we were asked, council was asked to approve $154,000 be diverted from a tourism survey that was done, and staff suggested that they would do it in-house. So at this point, can anyone ask, or can I ask, has the equivalent survey or report been completed yet?
Your Worship, I have reviewed the draft. I don't believe it's been issued yet because it's going to go, I understand, to the Economic Development Commission first. I know council members have had a copy of it, though. It was done as part of a master's thesis by one of our employees during their leave of absence.
But it would be the equivalent nature?
Just remember, sir, that what this question period deals with is agenda items only. Things are on tonight's agenda, and questions related to that.
Certainly, Your Worship. The question was suggested by Councillor Holdham that staff could do this, and I'm just trying to point out that perhaps staff couldn't, because, as someone else correctly pointed out, they are very overtaxed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions?
My name is Fred Taylor, 204 Emery Way. I hope that the council, in its consideration of size of signs and everything, reserves the right for development variances and everything, because in the Port Theatre fences and stuff like that, when they come for a variance on the size of the sign, I think it's using some intelligence here about not having a lot of graffiti, etc., because when you paint signs and things like that, you get away from that graffiti, it seems. And my last question is, can storage containers generate assessment and taxation, in fairness to any other businesses that build buildings and everything to house their goods?
Mr. Kenny, would you like to have a shot at that?
Well, I would defer to our finance director, but I believe that they would not be accessible unless they're permanently fixed.
No, they don't generate assessment or taxation.
So the answer is we believe no. Yeah. Okay. Any further questions for the agenda items only?
We adjourn.
No.
I would like to move that we go in camera for a special item.
So at this point, for those that are watching at home, we just want to point out that the broadcast will be ending at this point and we'll be moving into in camera.
What is the proper procedure?
The correct motion would be that council move in camera in order to deal with the following matter under the Community Charter, Section 91B, personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a municipal award.